On the 10th anniversary of the 2015 nuclear agreement, Iran announced the official end of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. Tehran declared itself unbound by all nuclear limits, even while stressing a commitment to diplomacy. Celebrating what it calls the Termination Day, Iran asserts that the end of the accord makes all previously lifted sanctions null and void. With the deal now dead, are we entering a dangerous new chapter, or does this collapse finally open the door to a better form of diplomacy? Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
The international nuclear deal with Iran, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, has officially ended. Tehran declared it is no longer bound by 2015 agreement. According to The Guardian, Iran's foreign ministry confirms the country remains committed to diplomacy, but the deal itself has been collapsing for years. Attempts to revive the agreement failed, especially after the recent 12-day war in June. Prior to the formal end, Britain, France and Germany triggered the snapback process, reinstating U.S. sanctions on the deal's official termination day of October 18th. Despite this collapse, the European powers announced last week they plan to seek new talks for a comprehensive, durable and verifiable agreement. Meanwhile, Egypt is intensifying diplomatic efforts to revive negotiations between Iran and the United States on Tehran's nuclear program and enhance regional stability. According to Egypt Today, Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati held a series of high-level calls on Saturday with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi, and U.S. Middle East Envoy Steve Witkoff. The discussions were framed by Egypt's push for security and de-escalation, especially building on the momentum of the Cairo Agreement signed between Iran and the IAEA on September the 9th. And to analyze more on this situation, joining us from Tehran is Saeed Shawardi, Iranian affairs expert, and from Marbella is Meher Nicholas Ferzili, director of the EU ASEAN Centre. A very warm welcome to both our guests, and we start off with Mr. Meher. Mr. Meher, Iran announced the official end to the decade-long agreement, declaring it is no longer bound by any nuclear limitations under the 2015 deal. What are the implications of this, sir?
I'm delighted to join you today. First, a short caveat. Personally, I have no sympathy for the Iranian government or for the Iranian regime, but I'm trying to be fair here because there is a lot of propaganda against them coming from Europe especially, and especially from Germany, France, and to a lesser extent, Britain. And I think it's not fair because it creates very bad precedents for the international system and for the international
Mr. Meher, what's not fair is the backlash that's happening from the European countries?
What's unfair is the legal tricks. The E3, right, the Troika, so the E3 would be Germany, France, Britain, they have played some dirty tricks, to be honest, in the past 6-7 weeks to try to put Iran in a corner using a very small clause of the 2015 agreement. And the Iranians were a little naive because, that agreement signed 10 years ago was more than 200 pages, and sometimes when you sign a contract there is a fine print, like a small fine print footnote on page 275, and you don't really realize that, so you sign blindly. So the agreement signed 10 years ago was very favorable to Iran because the Obama White House wanted it to be favorable to Iran, and the Europeans didn't have much say back then. And to make a long story short, what the Europeans are doing now in the past 6-7 weeks, they use the clawback clause to put Iran in a corner. And I think what the Iranians did in the past 24 hours, with the help of Russia and China, is to tell the Europeans, okay, you are putting us in a legal corner here. It is unfair. It's not nice. It's not the way superpowers should deal on an equal footing. If so, we are getting out of that agreement. And I think that was a big shock to the Europeans because they thought that they had Iran in the bag, right? They thought that they had Iran cornered and that they would hit Iran. And by backing away from the whole agreement with the help of Moscow and Beijing, I think tactically it's very smart from the part of the Iranians. And one last point, when you have an agreement between grown-ups, right? When you have a contract signed by adults, consenting adults, not liars or people trying to play games and tricks, right? When you have an agreement which is a fair agreement, both parties have to make concessions. I mean, this is the foundation of international law, but more than that, this is the foundation of contract law. If you sign a contract, both parties give something in exchange of something else. And I think what the Europeans tried to do in a very dirty way in the past 5-6 weeks is they try to tell the Iranians, you have to do a lot of things, and in exchange for that, we have to do nothing. It's not how
Mr. Meher, is this what you refer to as dirty tricks?
Yes, exactly. So it's not how international law works. It's not how proper contract law works, because an agreement between sovereign nations is governed, a treaty is governed by the laws, by the rules of contract law. And I think what the Iranians did, once again, with the backing of Russia and China, is very smart, because it allows them to get out of the corner where the Europeans were pushing them.
Mr. Saeed, a very warm welcome. And despite the deal's end, Tehran stated it remains committed to diplomacy. After the JCPOA's collapse, What is the structure of the new diplomatic solution Iran envisions, sir? Of course, plus, do you agree with what Mr. Meher said or not?
Evening to you and to everyone who's watching here. Of course, the agreement has ended, and Iran is saying that now they are free of the previous agreement, or free from the GCPOA that it signed with the P5. But now Iran thinks that the sanctions that were imposed on it through Europe and America are sanctions that are illegal now, and they should not comply to them, and they need to get rid of these sanctions. And Iran says that it is now able to enhance its nuclear program for peaceful use on all fields, or in all fields. Iran does not want to enhance the nuclear program for military purposes, as Europe and America claim. And so I think that the USA and Israel have failed the negotiations on purpose. We were really close to reaching a new nuclear agreement between Iran and the USA, or between Iran and the previous parties that were in the nuclear agreement. But the war that Israel and the USA had on Iran caused everything to fail. And then there were some attempts from lots of countries, from like Egypt, for example, to have the parties at the negotiation table again, and Iran reached an agreement with the IAEA under the support of Cairo, and Iran was supposed to start a new phase with cooperation with the IAEA, even though they were having a war. But unfortunately, the European countries, France, Britain, and Germany, have failed actually through activating the snapback mechanism, and the attempts of such countries to reimpose the sanctions on Iran again. And so this is how the Cairo agreement has failed. And so today all the parties are working according to what they think is right. The European countries are trying to impose sanctions on Iran along with America, and Iran is saying that they have stopped all forms of coordination and cooperation with Europe and America, and have stopped even the negotiations, and are ready to fight for its people, and to get back their peaceful nuclear rights according to the NPT agreement. And so the world now are fed up the policy that they are implementing, the Europe and America, how they are handling things with Iran. We remember how America withdrew in 2018 unilaterally from the nuclear agreement, and Trump basically ripped it to shreds. And it was an agreement that had so much effort put to reach it in 2015, but then Trump ripped it to pieces.
Okay, sir, I got it here. Thank you very much. I just want to ask you a question. How do you think Iran is going to handle this situation? As an Iranian expert, Mr. Saeed, how do you think Iran is going to handle this situation?
Than before. The American sanctions now are very weak. They cannot stop the Iranian economy, and the countries around the world. A few days ago we saw a meeting so as to not have them alive. More than 120 countries were calling relieve the sanctions on Iran, and they thought of the sanctions as an illegal that Europe and America are having on Iran. Today, Russia and China. Being in the Security Council, they are absolutely refusing reimposing the sanctions again on Iran, and now actually these sanctions are unilateral. The USA sanctions, no one really wants these sanctions except for Netanyahu and France, Britain, and Germany. Even the European Union, the other European countries don't want these American sanctions on Iran, because they harm the European economy and they harm the European people. But the three European countries, they think that they need to comply to the American sanctions because of what Washington is doing. And so now the whole world are refusing these sanctions and condemning them. China thinks of these sanctions as harmful to their economy. Russia condemns it as well. All the neighboring countries to Iran, like Turkey, for example, and lots of other countries that have economic relations with Iran don't want these sanctions to stay up, especially that there
Got
is
your
no
point.
justification.
Leave it here, Mr. Saeed. Mr. Meher, your take on Mr. Saeed's comments, sir, and how do you read it?
I mean, I don't want to sound cynical. But
Why don't you want to sound cynical?
Or dark or pessimistic. But what I'm coming at is here, I will criticize both the European hardliners, Germany, France, Britain, but I will also criticize the Iranians. So I think they're both have kind of a hardline stance, and probably the Europeans.
Sorry, sir, who has hardline? The both, you said?
Both the Iranians and the European Troika. And the European Troika is probably more hardline and more extremist than the Iranians, which is kind of funny. And why am I saying so in a cynical way? Because I think they're both clinging to the past. Why are the Iranians and the European Troika clinging to the past? Because the European Troika, to make a long story short, who are they? They are neoconservatives. So they are not like President Jacques Chirac, right, who opposed the Gulf War and opposed George W. Bush and Tony Blair. Today, most governments in Europe, their ideological orientation, their thinking, their worldview is very much the worldview of George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and Tony Blair. They like war. They love war. They believe in perpetual war and in neo-colonialism, just like George W. Bush and Tony Blair. What's interesting is when President Trump entered the White House 10 months ago, he put an end to the neoconservative lobby in Washington. And here I will disagree with my Iranian colleague. I think he's wrong about Trump. And by the way, when Trump...
Who's wrong about Trump, sir?
My Iranian colleague. And the Iranian government. I think they're wrong about Trump.
What did he say wrong about Trump?
Precisely when he said that in 2018, he torn down the nuclear agreement, right? He exited abruptly and brutally the nuclear agreement in the year 2018. Yes, because the first Trump presidency was very different from the second Trump presidency. Why? Very briefly, because in the first Trump presidency, 7 years ago, the neoconservative lobby was still very strong inside the Republican Party and inside the Trump White House, with people like John Bolton, who are really from sort of George Bush school, right? Today, it's a complete different Trump White House. What he did in the past 8 years, he got rid of the neoconservatives within his own party. That's why they fled to Paris, Berlin, and London. And today, this is where you have the neoconservative warmongering extremists in France, Germany, and the European Commission. And they want war with Iran. It is not what Trump wants. Trump has a very cold worldview. He doesn't hate Iran. He doesn't like Iran. he couldn't care less. But he's not a hardliner like Ursula von der Leyen or NATO.
He doesn't
or
hate Iran. He
Macron.
doesn't like Iran, but he doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
Yes, he wants a deal. So I think what Trump wants is a deal
They were
with
in the middle, sir, of negotiations, and
Yes.
then suddenly Israel decided
Exactly.
to.
Exactly. And I think this is why we had the 12 days, the very strange, very bizarre, very theatrical.
Isn't
12
there
days
question
war.
marks about this 12-day war, sir?
Yes, because I think the Israelis, with the backing of the Europeans, so when the Israelis attacked Iran, triggering the 12 days war, clearly they had the backing of NATO, Ursula von der Leyen, and Emmanuel Macron, right? Initially, Trump did not want to be dragged into that war, and Trump did everything he could to stop the war after 11, 12 days. So
But he is the one that hit at the end of the day, sir.
Yes, because it was theater. So it was a theatrical, it was not an all out. So on both sides, Iranian side, Israeli side, it was not an all out war. I think the Iranians were playing defense, and to stop the war, Trump hit Iran symbolically, but his objective was to stop the war and to prevent Israel, with the backing of Europe, to escalate into a much bigger conflict. So to make a long story short, I'll give you my personal opinion. Trump is neutral. Trump does not want to hit Iran. Trump does not want to be entangled in a long war with Iran, like America was entangled in a long war in Iraq, right? And he thinks that the neoconservative view, the George Bush, Emmanuel Macron view, is really stupid. And I think Trump is right. And I think he doesn't want an entanglement. What does Trump want? He's focusing aggressively on one single issue. He doesn't care about Iran, Israel, the Middle East. One single issue, the technological industrial race with China. This is the only concern Trump has. All the rest is irrelevant to him.
Okay, sir, I'll leave it here, and I'll come back and ask you about Trump and why is anyone or any country that's dealing with China an issue with Trump with regards to the Iranian, of course, the nuclear sanctions? I'm not going to discuss anything otherwise the sanctions in this program today. I'll go to Mr. Saeed and I'll be back to you again. Mr. Saeed, when the JCPOA ended, what fundamental, verifiable assurance would Iran require from the West to return the original limits set in 2015? And it's obvious from Mr. Meher and what he just said now that it was a different administration with Trump as the leader of the United States. But his second term is totally different.
I don't think that the West can give guarantees to Iran. They have failed. The E3 and America have failed of keeping up or they failed to comply. They said in 2015 that they will relieve all the sanctions, but just Iran needs to sign the nuclear agreement, and things will go back to normal after 10 years from that date. And so on the 18th of October, yesterday, Iran was not supposed to have any sanctions. Iran was supposed to be able to get back their assets and could buy and sell arms. The nuclear program also was supposed to be normalized with no with nothing that America can use against Iran, and that the verification operations from the it could be normal, but unfortunately America and Europe did not keep their promises. They reimposed sanctions on Iran, and America even withdrew from the agreement and imposed more sanctions on Iran. The European countries did not deal with Iran with the trade and economically. And then they also had a war on Iran, which is even worse. They tried to target the scientists, the nuclear scientists, and now everything is clear to us that the West had a negative will, and that they did not really want Iran to benefit from the nuclear agreement. It was actually a trick that Europe and America did. They just wanted to stop the peaceful nuclear activities and pushing Iran without anything in it for Iran. Now the people of Iran are facing the truth is that America does not want an agreement, and Europe does not either. They just want to take everything from Iran actually, and try to weaken their economy and create problems and issue for the people of Iran. And so the whole Iran now knows, here in Iran, no one really relies on new agreements, like when the Iranian government said that America betrayed the negotiations and they bombed the negotiations table. They killed the negotiators and the politicians. And so now Iran does not trust America and Europe at all. They were a week before the nuclear agreement, and there were some people who hoped that the nuclear not straightforward. Now Iran does not
It's not
trust.
about being straightforward. It's about being a war suddenly was ignited in when Israel decided to hit Iran. So the negotiations stopped easily. Mr. Meher, I asked you a question before I went to Mr. Saeed, and for the West, is the current goal to revive a version of the old JCPOA, or to create a completely new framework addressing nuclear activity?
So I think, once again, the Iranians did very well, with the backing clearly of Russia and China, to get out of the deal, because, once again, in the past 5 weeks, the European Troika was playing legal dirty tricks to put Iran in a corner.
But, sir, sorry to interrupt you, but it's worth to mention that Iran was very clear and stated that it is a strong country in this 12-day war.
Yeah, whatever, that's also part of the...
It's not whatever, sir, it's a fact.
Yeah, maybe not, but it's not the issue. So I think, the real issue is, what is Iran's interest? Iran's interest, because they went out of the deal, they torpedoed metaphorically, that European Troika effort to put them in a corner, which would have been horrible for the Iranian economy. That was very smart. And now, what is the goal? To start afresh, to start anew, so a blank page, right? Of course, the blank page will not be completely blank. So when they start...
Mr. Meher, how do you want a start fresh when Donald Trump says out and loud, Iran, we will discuss and we will negotiate and we will reach a deal?
Yeah, of course.
He already has the answer. He's not
course.
discussing. He's not negotiating.
No, what I'm saying...
And this is the United States.
What I'm saying is, here, the Iranians and some people in the Middle East are making that mistake. In my opinion, it's a mistake to conflate the White House, America, Trump, and Israel, and to think that they move in sync, right? So my Iranian colleague said that, blah, 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 and they have killed Iranian diplomats and Iranian scientists. No, it's Israel who has killed Iranian diplomats and Iranian scientists. America is not responsible for that.
Mr. Meher, does Israel do anything without the United States' permission?
Of course they do. And in my opinion, it's a classic misconception, because in the past, like in the Bush-Cheney era, and to a lesser extent, the Clinton-Obama era, Israel and America, their policies in the Middle East and their policies vis-a-vis Iraq and Iran in particular were aligned. Today, they're not aligned. Today, America first. What does it mean, America first? It means a form of national egoism. What does it mean, national egoism? So if there are cases when the interests of Israel and America diverge, America first means that the White House will choose American interests. What am I coming at? What is the value of Iran in the eyes of Trump? Not much, but there's one thing which is very important.
China.
China, and look at the size.
Okay, sir. Mr. Meher, in 10 seconds, because I have to wrap up now. China, Russia, and Iran stand on one side, and of course the Troika, which is the E3, and Israel and Trump, of course. How do you read the situation when it comes to negotiations for the Iranian nuclear powers, sir, or dismantling Iran from nuclear weapons or even enrichment?
I think the Israeli hardliners and the European hardliners are allied, clearly. Trump is a little different from them. He's obsessed with the New Silk Road. Because of China's New Silk Road and because of Iran's geographic importance, Trump is willing to make a few concessions and is willing to offer a fair deal to the Iranians as long as the Iranians themselves make concessions to reach a deal with Trump.
Okay, why should they make concessions where they're the upper hand, sir? Mr. Meher Nicholas Ferzilli, Director of EU ASEAN Center, and Saeed Shawerdi, Iranian Affairs expert. Thank you very much both for your time, special insights, and your valuable discussion. It was really an interesting interview, and I thank you so much. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews. Thank you very much. I'm Rana Qassas, and thank you very much for the team of this program, and it's goodbye.